The USA is currently in pursuit of territorial divisions. It is a nation led by mentally ill individuals. Donald Trump is the naked face of what the USA has always been: violent, imperialist, and evil.
In 2025, Julius Malema declared full solidarity with Iran in South Africa, stating that the country had the right to defend itself by any means necessary against the United States and Israel. He said it was time for Israel to taste the devastation it had inflicted on Gaza, and he said all of this knowing Donald Trump had already threatened to arrest him and that American officials had warned he could face sanctions for his anti-Western rhetoric. Malema said Iran was under siege from Western imperialism for choosing independence. He rejected what he called the bullying of Iran by the United States, Israel, and their allies. He declared Iran had the right to defend itself by any means necessary, and that Israel should finally taste its own medicine and experience the same devastation as Gaza.
The USA is currently in pursuit of territorial divisions of the world in order to control global markets and provide greater influence of global corporations over the natural resources of society. It is a nation led by paranoid and possibly mentally ill individual who has no regard for international law, for the logic of economy, and for the science of politics. As a result, we are all faced with a crisis because for too long, capitalism has been dominating economic order of the world. As socialists, it is our duty in these moments to see the silver lining, and that is, as capitalism collapses, we are given an opportunity to usher in a new world order based on equality, prosperity for all, and the return of the means of production into the hands of the people. We must not view the current international moment as one of despair, but within it, we must mobilize resistance, solidarity, and a new era of humanity. This new era is one where the USA no longer exists as the so-called leader of the free world. It is a new era where humanity must speak boldly against the presence of US military bases in foreign countries. It is a new era wherein we must divorce the global economy from dependency on the dollar. It is an era where we technological advancement and military capacity must be built by all nations so that we can defend ourselves against the threat of US imperialism. Comrades, inasmuch as Donald Trump is a manifestation of tyranny and fascism, he is not a major departure from the core of what represents the character of the USA. The USA has always been imperialistic. The USA has always been a destabilizing force in the world. What has changed is that the leader of the USA today pursue the destructive policies of the USA openly without pretending to be seeking peace. Donald Trump is the naked face of what the USA has always been: violent, imperialist, and evil. It was the president of the USA, Truman, who dropped the atomic bomb on the innocent people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, killing more than 200,000 people. It was Johnson of the USA who invaded Vietnam and under his authority undermined the human rights. It was George Bush who led the disinformation campaign that Iraq and Afghanistan had weapons of mass destruction in order to justify causing instability in those nations in order to steal their oil. Fellow fighters, it was Barack Obama who orchestrated the death of brother leader Muammar Gaddafi. Until today, Libya has not recovered and our African brothers are sold in a slave trade in that region. I say this to highlight to you that Donald Trump is simply continuing a tradition of violence as foreign policy by the USA. When Trump invaded Venezuela and kidnaps Nicolas Maduro, he is continuing a tradition of violence as foreign policy. When Trump bombs Nigeria, bombs Iran, and finds genocides of people of Palestine by Israel, his continuing U.S. policy of violence as a means to entrench U.S. imperialism. I've said this before, that any expectation that after Donald Trump's term comes to an end, that our relationship with the USA will stabilize is misplaced. Donald Trump is an extension of a history of destructive U.S. foreign policy, and as long as South Africa stands with Palestine, then we will never know peace. It is therefore important to be aware of this as we head to local government elections here in South Africa, and be aware of the possibility of U.S. interference in our elections, be it through funding our ideological opponents, attempting to fracture our democracy using tribal lines and traditional leaders, or actively pursuing the imprisonment of leaders of the left in our country. This election is not one that will be purely domestic, especially considering the propaganda machinery deployed against South Africa of a non-existent white genocide. We must begin to prepare ourselves for the West, as the USA is determined to punish South Africa for standing up against apartheid Israel. We must never surrender, even in the face of imperialism or death. We must never be shaken, and we must never compromise our sovereignty to please the United States of America. The EFF has noted the threat by the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, who has issued a threat to cut foreign aid to South Africa and impose sanctions on South Africa for adopting legislation that permits the expropriation of land without compensation and implementing policies that addresses historical race-based inequalities in our country. The statement by Donald Trump is offensive and undermines our sovereignty, and is a reminder that our reliance on foreign aid and foreign direct investment surrenders us to the will of imperialists who use money to dictate the economic and policy direction of Africa. We want to make it categorically clear to the President of the USA that we are going to expropriate land without compensation and pursue legislative measures to do so, and no threat will stop us. His misinterpretation of the Expropriation Act, which is a mild and cosmetic intervention, is an assessment of a measure that is going to be pursued through the amendment of our Constitution as South Africans, and there is nothing he can do to undermine our independence. The EFF reiterates its position that we must build state capacity, build a strong agricultural and industrial nation which will not depend on the West, and intensify trade relations with progressive nations such as China, Russia, and nations within BRICS